going on, YouTube? So the national championship game just finished maybe about an hour ago, maybe a little bit less, but so that does officially conclude the 2015-2016 college football season. It's been a really fun season. Seemed like it flew by like that. And you know what? Time for me to do my complete season recap. So before I go in and actually do my way too early top 25 for next season, I want to just do a quick recap of the season that just passed us. So basically how I'm going to actually outline this is I'm going to do my biggest surprises, disappointments, and the best and worst parts of the season. So the biggest surprises to me, first one was OU. So OU started out the season, I believe, I want to say preseason number 21. It was either preseason number 21 or 18. I believe they were, I can't remember. Anyway, you know, they had a great season. Won the Big 12. You take out that loss to Texas, and really, I mean, a fantastic season. I mean, they lost to a team in Clemson, who I genuinely believe is the second best team in the country. Maybe if they hadn't lost to Michigan State, maybe the third best to Alabama and Ohio State. I still genuinely believe. I believe Ohio State's kind of like the TCU from last year. Had a chance, but lost one big game to the eventual conference winner, even though they might have been the better team. Anyway, I think that OU had a fantastic year. Baker Mayfield, one of the biggest surprises in college football. We're talking about players, and you know what? Great hire to get Lincoln Riley. He really transformed that offense, and even through the year, found a way to make use of Joe Mixon's Samaje Perine, even though there was a lot less emphasis on the running game. So I think that OU will have a lot of hype going into 2016, and with good reason. They might be the favorite to win the Big 12 again. I don't know. It's either going to be them or Baylor. OU, Baylor, Oklahoma State, and TCU are all going to still be the best teams in the conference. All return at least some key pieces to their team. So move on to my second biggest surprise, which was Iowa. Obviously, I think that this could be this is my second biggest surprise. This is my number 2 surprise. These aren't in any order here, but if I could name the biggest surprise for any team, I would probably say Iowa. Fantastic year. Obviously, the Rose Bowl was kind of rough, but I mean, you ran into a team in Stanford with a player that just got snubbed from the Heisman, who might be the best player in the country, and you know what? That's hard to stop, especially when you haven't seen a team like that before. So, I think that Iowa really did have a fantastic season, 3 points away from winning the Big Ten. You know what? I doubted them a little bit. I think everyone did at some point, and you know what? They were really this close from making the college football playoff, and 2-loss season, beating really a handful of good teams. Excuse me, including Northwestern, Wisconsin. Sorry, and that's just off the dome to start. They do have a little bit tougher schedule next year. I believe they do have to play Michigan and Penn State out of the Big Ten East, but. Nonetheless, great season for Iowa. They probably will finish inside the top, if not the top 10, the top 12 when they started the year unranked. So move on to my third biggest surprise, which was Houston, or my third surprise, which was Houston. So this will kind of ladder into something I talk about later. So obviously, great season for Houston, beating FSU in the Peach Bowl. Great way to cap it off, and really just. Did what they had to do to give themselves a little bit of credit and credibility heading into next year when they might even be able to contend for a college football playoff spot. Obviously, they're going to be the favorite for the AAC. They might be the favorite just as the best team, and they'll probably be the highest ranked team in the Group of 5 as a whole. Greg Ward returns, and you know what? I think he could be a low key kind of Heisman dark horse, and. Definitely, I don't really have much more to say about it. Obviously, the loss to UConn hurt, but they did end up winning the AAC. They end up probably will finish inside the top 10 this year. On the top 10, then like I said, the top 12. But they deserve it. They beat the number 9 team in their bowl game. They beat that team straight up. It's not like FSU was missing Sean McGuire for a little bit, but if he had been in there for the whole game, I still think it would have been, if not the same result, Houston still would have won. They had Dalvin Cook for the entire game, and like I said, I think it was a straight-up great season for Houston. And move on to my biggest disappointments. So the first one is obvious. This is the biggest disappointment, and that's Auburn. Yeah, they won their bowl game. They capped off the season well, beating Memphis. But 6-6 after not only having top 10 hype, but also having college football playoff hype, Heisman hype for Jeremy Johnson, it just all fell apart very, very, very quickly. They won their first 2 games, but actually I think they might have won their first 3, but those were very slim. They almost lost to, I believe it was Jacksonville State. If it was Jacksonville State, though, honestly not a terrible loss because Jacksonville State ended up making the FCS national championship, even though they got railed by North Dakota State. So that was my first disappointment. I think they'll have a decent team heading into next year, but I think it'll be another 8-win season for Auburn, that type of year. So my second biggest disappointment is the Arizona schools, Arizona and Arizona State. Arizona dealing with a lot of injuries this year too. Anu Solomon, Scooby Wright, Nick Wilson. There was injuries all across the board for them. I do believe that even with Anu Solomon, he didn't have a great year. He had an okay year. Did what he had to do to win the bowl game. And finished the year 7-6 for Arizona. Obviously, I had them hyped up to be a top 10 team this year. I thought they would be able to follow through. Injuries, mediocre play, ended up costing them. Arizona State, though, not really many excuses for that. Mike Bercovici was healthy for the entire year. They should have had a better year. If I'm wrong, I believe they lost. If I'm wrong about this, I sound really stupid, but I believe they lost to West Virginia in their bowl game, and it was a very good game. And honestly, Bercovici looked good for the amount of time that I was watching it, because I believe it was the last bowl game of the season, outside of the national championship. So both those teams obviously not finishing inside the top 25 when starting the year. Both of them, I believe, in the top 20. So that brings me to my third disappointment, and this one has a asterisk by it, and that's TCU and Baylor. So I understand TCU, they actually still win their bowl game, just somehow, some way. That 31-point comeback was insane. That was, in my opinion, the best bowl game. But like I said, there's an asterisk by this for both these teams just because they had to deal with enormous injuries. Baylor, obviously, with their whole quarterback situation, losing Seth Russell about halfway through the year, and then losing Jarrett Stidham in the OSU game, and then even losing Chris Johnson at one point. And then, you know what, both these teams found a way to power through, and I think both teams could have top 10 hype heading into next year. But as a whole, both these teams were top 5 for a decent amount of the season. Both these teams were expected to head up the Big 12 and win, and one of them make the playoff. But you know what, the Big 12 is still represented in the playoff, and you know what, like I said, I think for the circumstances they were presented with, I think it was honestly a pretty successful year for both teams. All right, so moving to my best parts of the year, and the first one was midseason upsets. So through about, I believe it was weeks 3 to 10, it was fantastic to watch. Week after week, it just seemed like the number 1, 2, 3, or 4 or 5 team was falling. A few ones off the dome that I remember. This was at the time, not saying they would be upsets now, but Alabama beating Ole Miss, then Florida just derailing Ole Miss. Man, this is digging back a while here. Oklahoma State at the time beating TCU, that was a pretty big one. Texas beating OU was a sizable one as well. Trying to think across the board here. Utah beating Oregon at the time was a massive upset. Utah, at one time, having college football playoff hype. Still a very successful season for Utah, though, nonetheless. Oregon rebounding was a big part, but that's an entirely separate thing. And like I said, just as a whole, I don't think it was really a huge upset at the time, but Clemson beating... Actually, I think Clemson was the higher-ranked team than Notre Dame. That was a great game, though. That was a really, really fantastic game. A 2-point conversion away from Notre Dame tying it. But, yeah, like I said, a lot of midseason upsets that made the middle of the season just a very generally entertaining time to watch college football. My second one is SEC bowl domination, and this is the best part of the season one of the best parts of the season for me, because I like it when a conference kind of takes a step back from the hype, kind of like the SEC did this year, and really just prove themselves the way they did in bowl season. It was domination like no other. because the SEC after the bowl season last year, I believe they went, I think it was 2-5 in their bowl games. Some of the biggest, Ole Miss got thrashed. Mississippi State got beat by, I can't remember who they get. I can't remember who they, Georgia Tech or Arizona maybe. Anyway, I wanted to mention that actually. Georgia Tech, one of the biggest disappointments. So that's one I forgot. Georgia Tech, massive disappointment this year. Didn't even make a bowl game. Had top 12 hype heading into the year. All right. Anyway, SEC bowl domination. The only team to lose, I believe, was Florida. Obviously, Alabama just winning the national championship, so SEC taking the crown of it all. Not to mention a lot of other bowl games. Ole Miss destroying Oklahoma State. Arkansas beating Kansas State. Auburn beating Memphis. Mississippi State beating NC State. Tennessee beating Northwestern. Georgia beating Penn State. There has to be more. I can't really, like I said, I can't really put my finger on it right now. Texas A&M did lose. Okay, never mind. Texas A&M did lose to Louisville, so 2 teams lost. All right. So move on to my group of 5 competition. That was my last best part, and that was just kind of the group of 5, closing the gap between the group of 5 and the Power 5. The AAC was really fantastic this year. Thinking back to a couple of games, Toledo beating Arkansas early in the season. Obviously, Arkansas had a rough start to the season, losing to Texas Tech and Toledo. But Memphis beating Ole Miss, Temple competing with Notre Dame. Navy kind of competed with Notre Dame, but wasn't anything to get worked up about. Houston beating FSU in the bowl game. But anyway, just as a whole, the AAC was a very competitive conference with Navy, Houston, Temple, all those teams. USF ended up being very good as well. Western Kentucky, Bowling Green, Toledo, and like I said, Boise State finished the year very strong as well. So really just across the board, great competition for the group of 5. I think I don't know if it'll continue into next year, but it was something that I like to watch. I like it when some of the lower tier schools are able to compete very well. App State, also another good story. In their first full season, Georgia Southern, very comparable. Really their first full season of FBS play, making a bowl game, not only making but winning it. So that brings me to my worst parts of the year. And my first one is the targeting rule. It seemed like this just was the worst year for targeting. I understand the premise of the rule. I understand that it's something that needs to happen, but you've got to revise this rule. You can't just, when a guy looks like he might be going for the head of another player, you're tackling. A lot of times you lead with the head because that's just tackling form. And there were so many times this year where it just wasn't targeting, and just out of boneheaded referee views, just ejecting a player that shouldn't have been ejected for any reason. I swear to God, I saw it at least 5 times a weekend, and especially in the bowl games, when you saw a player, if it was his last game, getting ejected for a targeting call that really shouldn't have been a targeting call, it's terrible. So that's one thing that I really think they need to I'm not saying I don't care about player safety, but I'm saying that that's a rule that needs to get revised, needs to get looked over. Maybe just keep the 15-yard penalty, and then if you feel like it's bad enough, then I don't know. Make the reviews better is honestly the thing that I think needs to be done. I understand the rule. I think it should still be a penalty, and if it's bad enough, I do still think you should get kicked out. But I think you need to make the rule clear. I think you need to make the review better. That's my take on the whole opinion. All right, my second one was the playoff semifinals. Now, it was nothing against the format or anything like the teams that were selected. I believe this year was a very clear idea for the teams who were selected. It was very clear who was going to be in it. But the games were just not competitive. This is just the way things turned out. Neither of them were entertaining to watch. The first half of the OU-Clemson game was a little bit entertaining. In the second half, Clemson just pulled away. Alabama-Michigan State wasn't entertaining in the least, unless you're a huge Alabama fan and love when they blow teams out. Or unless you're a Michigan or Ohio State fan and you loved watching Michigan State lose. Me as an OSU fan, I didn't. I mean, I wanted OU to win. I wanted them to rep the Big 12 because really the Big 12 did horrible in bowl games. But they just weren't very competitive. That was one thing that I was hoping for better. The New Year's Six bowls as a whole weren't great. The FSU Houston game was pretty good, and then the Ohio State Notre Dame game was okay. Outside of that, no. Even the two games I mentioned weren't very good. Oklahoma State Ole Miss was terrible. Ole Miss just ran Oklahoma State. It seemed like every time Oklahoma State even had a chance to get back in the game, they'd find a way to just shoot themselves in the foot. Iowa Stanford wasn't even close, and I know I'm missing a couple. I know it wasn't a New Year's Six bowl, but Tennessee Northwestern wasn't a very good game. Neither was Florida Michigan. But nonetheless, still was a decent bowl season before that. A lot of the lower key games were a lot of fun to watch. The App State Ohio game was a lot of fun. The TCU Oregon game was a lot of fun. Baylor North Carolina was a lot of fun. West Virginia Arizona State, for the amount of time I watched it, was a lot of fun. Arizona New Mexico was a lot of fun. Trying to think of a few other ones. Boise State Northern Illinois was not. That was a blowout. But yeah, anyway. BYU Utah was a lot of fun, even though the first half didn't start out very well. I'm going to digress about that. It was a very fun bowl season for a lot of the low-key bowl games. Even Akron Utah State was entertaining. It was supposed to be the butt of all bowl games, and ended up being pretty good with Akron winning 23-21. But that brings me to my final one, and this is just my opinion because I watch a decent amount of ACC football, and that is the ACC's botched calls. Now, there were so many ACC refs this year suspended just because they sucked. The Duke-Miami game comes to mind. That blown call where Duke should have won on the kickoff where Miami returned the kick for the touchdown, and whoever that was that recovered it was actually down. Not taking anything away from Miami, but definitely should have been a win for Duke. Then the other thing that comes to mind is the North Carolina-Clemson game where North Carolina was called offsides, and they clearly were not. And that was not only really a game-changing call, but a season-changing call. North Carolina ends up getting it. Now, you don't. I mean, they did. I believe they ended up recovering it, so they would have ended up having the ball. You give them the ball there. The way Marquise Williams was playing, they probably score a touchdown, tie the game up, maybe even take the lead. And who knows? Maybe they're in the college football playoff. That Clemson would not be, and that would have completely changed the complexity of everything. Again, not taking anything away from Clemson. I'm not trying to hand anything to North Carolina, but that's just kind of the way the situations went. So that concludes my basic outline of the game. Now, just to wrap it up with a few thoughts from the end of the year. Like I didn't mention Georgia Tech and my biggest disappointments. A few other things I wanted to mention, teams with hype. I have an entirely separate video that I'm going to be doing for this. My way too early top 25 for next year. I don't know if I'm going to do my final top 25. Just kind of seems pointless to me because I know that obviously there's a final top 25 that comes out, but honestly at this point it's more fun to look forward to next season. So teams that I believe that will be going into next year with a lot of hype. Really just out of either returning players or natural progression. Michigan comes to mind. Florida State. Florida State returns a lot of players. OU. They don't really. That's not really unwarranted though, probably because they're going to finish the year inside the top 7. Baylor. Baylor returns a lot. I believe they're returning Seth Russell, Katie Cannon, Jay Lee. Corey Coleman will be going to the draft, but they still have a lot of other talent everywhere else. Even if Seth Russell doesn't work out, Jared Stidham was just as good. I believe TCU will have a lot of hype, even though they do lose Teron Boykin. They showed that they can compete really with whoever. I believe that's a lot of credit to Gary Patterson. Obviously, the champion of the all-season, Tennessee, will have a lot of hype going into next year. And really just looking through here, seeing if I missed any teams. LSU. the return of Leonard Fournette. I'm not going to go ahead and give LSU unwarranted hype until they can find a good quarterback, because I mean, it's going to go the same way it did this year. I don't think Leonard Fournette's going to have any better season than he did this year. It was just, I mean, it was a fantastic season. If they do find a better quarterback, yeah, then I think Fournette's yards per carry could go up, but not his actual yards. They won't have to rely as heavily on him. I think guys like Trevon Durrell will have a much better season next year if they're able to find a good quarterback. Notre Dame, another one that's going to have a lot of hype going into next year. Teams that lose a lot, just going into the draft. Ohio State, but I think they'll be able to reload. But they do lose Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Thomas, Von Bell, Eli Apple, Joey Bosa. They lose a lot. They really do lose a lot. Trying to go down the line here, thinking through my mind. USC, they do lose a decent amount. Most notably Cody Kessler. TCU does lose a lot, mainly just Trevon Boykin, Josh Doxson, really the backbone of their team this year. And let me see if I'm missing anything. Sorry, I'm going so slow at this point in the video. Actually, my bad. USC does not lose a whole lot. Sua Cravens and Cody Kessler will be tough losses, but I think once they can recover from. And then Oregon loses a lot as well. Mainly just because they lose Vernon Adams, a lot of their offensive line, and DeForest Buckner, their best defensive player, maybe their overall best player outside of Royce Freeman. So, just the rest of my thoughts on the season. It was a very, very fun season. My first that I was able to make college football predictions throughout for. I did a little bit last year, not a whole lot. You guys go back and watch my videos. I did like a way too early top 25 for the. I don't remember I don't think it was for this season. I think it was from last season. Yeah. I think it was for the 2014-15 season that I made a way too early top 25 for. And then I did a top 25 for this year, but it was a little bit later. Obviously, it wasn't like right after the national championship game. So I'm going to put a few links in the description below. Actually, this is mainly going to be for my top 25 video, but once I get that video posted, I'll put that link in the description below. And then to a few other top 25 lists that I think are either intriguing or pretty accurate. It is fun for me to read through the top 20, way too early top 25 lists, just because obviously they're so varied. There's so much that will happen between here then and now. National Signing Day still has not occurred. Transfers, graduate transferring is a big thing now, and injuries, obviously, suspensions, coaching changes. Even though a lot of those actually have already taken place, it's been a wild end of the season for the coaching carousel. But yeah, that pretty much concludes my 2015-2016 season recap. Like I said, there's so much to talk about that happened this year that you really can't compress it into one video. But this is really just the generic sum up of everything that happened this year. Like I said, it was a very, very entertaining season. I wish bowl season could have ended a little bit better, but the national championship game was a very entertaining game. Clemson hung well all game. Even seemed like they were taking control at certain points. And I gotta hand it to not only the ACC but the SEC. I think both conferences rep very well in the college football playoff. Obviously, Clemson representing the ACC very well and really dominating OU. The Big 12 did not represent well in bowl games. The Pac-12 did not represent very well at all. Obviously, that was the conference that was left out, but for good reason. The Pac-12 just cannibalized itself this year. It was probably the worst Power 5 conference this year. Big 10 did not show out well in the college football playoff with Michigan State. Really didn't show out very well in bowl games. Wisconsin won. They showed out well. Northwestern got destroyed. Ohio State did well. Michigan did well. Penn State lost. That's all I can think of right now. But you know what? Like I said, very entertaining season, a lot to talk about, but yeah, like I said, I love hearing what you guys have to say, especially about something as open-ended as this. What your thoughts were on this college football season, what you think it's going to be like heading into next year, what you think I did, or some of the things that you might like to see me do next year, prediction-wise. See if there's anything different that I could predict. I pretty much did a lot of things in depth this year. Pretty much every week I was doing my updated Heisman watch, my college football playoff predictions, my updated top 25, and then my actual updated predictions. Even at some points I did conference power rankings. I tried to do my updated prediction for the final top 25, which I'm going to go back and take a look at. If you haven't seen those, I actually want to go back and look at those, see how well they turned out. A few of the teams that I have, or that I had that I said were going to do very well this year, I believe the three that I said to watch out for that I didn't think were going to make the playoff that I still thought were going to be good were Navy, Arizona, and Wisconsin. I actually had Stanford in my playoff to begin the year. I don't know if I had them win. I think I had them winning the Pac-12. So that was the only one I really did well with. I either had them or Arizona winning the Pac-12. That wouldn't really have made sense, though, if I had Stanford going to the playoff but Arizona winning the Pac-12. Anyway, those were the teams that I was high on. Wisconsin kind of finished the year where they started, maybe a little bit lower. They're probably going to be ranked 25, 24 to finish the year. Navy will probably finish the year ranked about 15, right about where I think I had them at anyway, in my final top 25 prediction. And then I had Arizona at 10 at one point, but that obviously didn't pan out. So really just mixed results there. One that met the expectations, one that really just defied me completely, and then one that just kind of finished where it started. But like I said, I need to get on with the way too early top 25 video. So yeah, that's pretty much it. See ya.